where are you in the world, man? Where are you based?
So I'm in Boulder, Colorado. So
Oh, yeah. Awesome,
yeah,
man. Do you happen to have anything with Gordo Byrne? Do you know Gordo Byrne?
I don't. I,
I'm not sure
and
how big
and I hate saying this, it doesn't even sound familiar, so I apologize. I like if I should know, let me know.
No, Gordo Byrne was he's from a different world to us when it comes to sport. He was, I think it's called the Ultra Man. It was like an ultra endurance triathlon back in 2002, and he took a heap of time off, and he's recently made a return. He's like a 55-year-old Ironman athlete. Sort of, how would you explain it? He's not under the tutelage of a Phil Maffetone or a Joe Friel, but he's kind of that. He's very focused on that zone two style training. He seems to be from that world, very heart rate based, very science oriented in the way that he approaches his training. And I mean, I understand there's a few people living in Boulder, but I think that he's based there. So I just wasn't sure. He'd been on the podcast a couple of times, and his episodes had been super popular. And so I wasn't sure how well he was known in his hometown. Assuming that is his hometown, brother, he's probably from somewhere completely different in America. But is that home to you, Boulder?
This is
Always been
yeah.
there?
Yeah, no, well, I've been here for 4 years. So I moved here after the 2020 US Olympic Marathon trials. So um yeah, that was basically a kind of a COVID that summer move, and yeah, just stuck here, been here since. So hard to beat
Yeah.
Boulder in my opinion.
Dude, I'm yet to travel there, but I mean, everyone that I speak to speaks so highly of it. I know a lot of Aussies make their way across to Boulder, in their off season or when they're trying to get a little bit of altitude. I'm not sure exactly what the highest altitude training camp in Australia is, but I'm pretty sure that Boulder's got us covered by a long, long way. So the trails and the thin air over there seems to be an appealing factor. But where were you
Yeah,
before
this.
you made your way to Boulder?
So I was in Michigan. So I joined Hansons Brooks after college. So I was with them basically January 2019 through the May of 2020. So 14, 15 months there. That was kind of my how I got my start in professional running. Then prior to that was at Minnesota. So it was a grew up in Minnesota at the state there. Then ran for the Gophers there post collegiately. So Minnesota, Michigan to Boulder. So
Yeah, and who you coached by or who you training with in Boulder?
mostly, so I'm basically on my own. Hop around from like everyone knows everyone. So if like a workout works out with another group, easy. This could get really long-winded, but was Hansons Brooks. Um, moved out here, was kind of on my own, but also too was coached by Corey Leslie with Tin Man Elite. Kind of before that, the whole breakup. And then Corey went to Baltimore. I stayed here. She started a track group, so joined the Roots Running actually. Um, after that, was with them through basically last summer, but I wanted to go after ultimately the 50-mile world record, and they won. Just wasn't an opportunity there because they're kind of a pure marathon group. So ended up leaving last summer, and then 3 4 months later, I got the 50-mile world record. But that being said, was kind of bounced around like Luis Orta, if you know that name, um, Venezuelan, so a really good friend of mine would run with him. Trying to think who else. Honestly, just a lot of that. My buddy Spencer just moved out here. He used to live in Seattle, ran for Brooks out there, so trained with him quite a bit. My other buddy Charlie Sweeney ran for CU. It's kind of a mixed group, but there's always someone to hop in with, or a group to link up with. I mean, even the Roots guys were doing kind of an up tempo workout the other week, and I had basically a 30 miler at moderate effort, so did did a few loops with them. So that was great. I mean, everyone. I want to say there's an open invite, but definitely everyone's is like standoffish or pretty welcoming if sessions align. So
Yeah, man. So Lewis is in Boulder when he's not in Africa training.
he unfortunately just moved to Miami. So that was a couple months ago, which sucks for me because that was true. Like when I left the Roots, it was me and Luis doing basically stuff multiple times a week, and it just linked up super super well. We were able to bounce ideas off of each other, but I'm not sure if I answered your initial question too, but who's coaching me? But I'm basically self-coached, but I bounce a lot of stuff off of Plaz, my college coach, Steve Placentia. He's a two-time Olympian, 88 and 92. Yeah, the coach in Minnesota, so I bounce a lot of stuff off him, and then Dez. So, and they're both great. Both know kind of have their different niches. Obviously, Dez more marathon, Plaz for kind of just periodization and stuff. And that type of work. And if like even this morning, I was just picking his brain on a session I did earlier. So good balance, and definitely the good thing with those two, if I'm ever being an idiot, they won't hesitate to let me know, either of them. So that's always appreciated.
What's your version of being an idiot? I know every distance runner's got their own kryptonite, but when you're being an idiot, what does that look like? Is that pace or distance or a combination of both?
Combination of both, and honestly, it's probably just distance. Where even now, I'm just like I'm running Indy full the ninth, so 10 days away from right now. And I'm like, my mileage is going to be around this week. I was planning on about 135 miles this week. So, what is that in, K is 200-ish K, a little more maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
right before a marathon. Because I have 100K worlds ultimately in 5 weeks from this Saturday. So that's really the A goal. But also like, yo, you're trying to win a win a marathon in 2 weeks. Like, idiot. Like it doesn't matter. Like chill out. Like you don't need. I was like, yeah, should I throw an extra like threshold mile after this rep and then do should I do my shakeout? Because I'm gonna shake out after this. I'm like, should I do 5, 6 or 7? Like, dude, just do a shakeout. Do 4 or 5 miles max. Like you're racing in 9 days and you're trying to run fast. So definitely a combination of both, but for sure just the mileage is probably the thing they harp on me the most, where it's like I'm gonna do as much as I really can. But they'll let me know if I'm probably doing too much. So
Yeah. How has that transition into being self-coached gone for you? I mean, it's something that I'm always fascinated by. Currently, I'm sort of I'm not currently running at the level that you are, obviously. I was a former middle distance runner. I was better on the track. I was decent here in Australia without breaking any records. But I was always under the guidance of like some pretty good Aussie coaches, which for me, I always liked because it kind of just alleviated that element of stress. Like just what you said with the mentors that you've got just to bounce ideas off. I always found it really helpful to have people in my corner who weren't as emotionally attached to the work that I was doing. Like they could look at it a little more logically without all the adrenaline and dopamine or whatever else might kick in as you're trying to plan a session and offer some real practical guidance. But the project of just trying to navigate my own training routine lately has been really fun. I've been forced to I don't know, even educate myself a little more on things I probably took for granted. One thing that stands out is just, and I'd love to pick your brain about this when we get into some of the training talk. But one thing for me that I was probably a culprit for was pace. Like my easy runs were never really easy if you were going by heart rate. They were always like, yeah, I can justify this as an easy run, and I'm sure I can back up a session tomorrow.
yeah.
Um, but I think that's been one thing that's it's sort of taken my attention a little bit. Like for you, what are a couple of the standout features or challenges outside of what you just mentioned when it comes to coaching yourself?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it even like sessions like today where it's like, I mean, I'm 10 days out. I typically have a fairly similar session. I'll do 10 days out, but I'm like, well, I have 100K then in 4.5 or 5.5 weeks. It's like, or maybe I should keep the volume a little higher or do more reps here, do more reps here. It's just like start to overthink it. And like when you have a coach that you mentioned, it just takes the overthinking out of it. It's like, dude, just keep it the same. Like, don't do anything extra. Do like what works and that what has worked. So that's definitely something that I don't want to say it's stressful, but I definitely overanalyze a lot of aspects, especially like even today, it was our first day kind of below 40 degrees. It was like a light drizzle and like 35 degrees. Pretty damn miserable, honestly, like to work out in. Like I'd rather have like 20 degrees in snow than 35 in rain, and we had 35 in rain. Um, and it's just like the splits just weren't coming today. Like I was hitting what I wanted to, but I was working really damn hard to hit what I wanted to, or even close to what I wanted to. So like for me, it's just like you put it in perspective, like you have to take a step back and be like, all right, that was actually a pretty good session considering where you're at, considering the volume you're coming off of, like the sessions, the 2 runs yesterday, the strength session. Like you're just under a lot of fatigue right now, and you still had a pretty solid session. Whereas like, if it's Plaz or Des or a coach is running it, they'd be like, they'd literally take it into effect. You probably on that start line with their watch, like, hey, like take it easy. It's cold. You don't need to like push it. Whereas here I'm like, I had in my head, I'm like, I want to run a 4:30 to 35 opening mile, and it just didn't happen. I ran a 4:41. Like it just wasn't quite there. Whereas, but again, it's cold. Like I haven't worn tights in a workout in months. So it's just you have to kind of takes you out of your head a lot more when you have something like that. And obviously, I don't have someone always there. But I was just checking in with Plaz or Des, like that's still a great session. Or I was texting my buddy Spencer Brown, who he's kind of He's a solid runner. He's a YouTuber. He'll kind of be the first one to mention that. The Athlete Special is his page. He has like 120-ish thousand YouTube subscribers. So in the running world, pretty solid. But we're just actually like, dude, that's still a great session and miserable weather. So some days you gotta just take what you can get. And today that's kind of all I could get. And it's like, just don't overthink it. Because
Yeah.
I know if Plaz or Des were there, they'd be like, yeah, dude, don't overthink it. Like it was a cold, hard day, and you're coming off of 145-mile week last week. So chill
Wow.
out.
That's wild, man. It's funny when you write it down on paper, like, and you can look at it logically. You take into account temperature, you take into account volume, you take into account wind, a little bit of elevation. It's funny how you can look at it and you go, okay, well, I know I need to account for that when it comes to my session performance. But then you get out there and you look at your split and you're like, what the hell is wrong with me? And
Yeah,
I don't think
exactly.
there's ever been a distance runner that I've either ran with or coached who hasn't struggled with that. Man, I'm 37 now. I started running when I was 12. And man, still, I've got a local place that I go out to where I live. It's a relatively flat town. But I do my K reps, which is out and back. And on the way out, it's notorious for having a headwind, and it's 11 meters of elevation. And I'm not kidding. Every week, like if I go out and I can run 3:30 for one rep on the way out, like I'm going well on the best day. But you get a headwind, and you can be out to 3:45 and working harder. And I'll get to the 1K split knowing, like, for the last 4 years of doing that session, that it's going to be the case. And I don't think there's ever been a time where I hit a 3:40 split and haven't thought, what the hell is going on? And then I'll turn around and jog a 3:15, and I go, mate, I'm in such good form. Like, I cannot believe the form that,
Yeah.
and it's just an emotional roller coaster the whole session. So how do you deal with that, man? Like, outside of just bouncing that off people like Spence, um, like it's a real head game, isn't it? Like, just trying to see it for what it really is, and not just buy 100% into the emotional side of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just for me, like when I'm in that moment, even like today, or I think back to a session I did a couple weeks ago. I just did 15 by a mile, and it was on this loop here in Boulder where um, it's basically net even, but there's one section, and if you've been here, like especially like this time of year, it's typically always a west wind, and it can get pretty miserable, like 20, 30 mile per hour. But there's just it's about a point 0.45 mile stretch, slightly uphill and into the wind going west on this like 2.2 mile loop I was doing. And it's so rep one, I start and I'm kind of just going around, I guess what you call like the front side, about to take this turn, hit it through, just a minute jog, I continue on the loop. And of course I get, a quarter mile into the second rep, take the left on this road called Monarch. I'm going uphill into the wind in my face. Like I just ran, I think the first mile was like 5:01, kind of a crosswind. Like I'm like, perfect, good work. Start going uphill into the wind. And I see him running like 5:18, 5:19 pace, like a half mile in. I'm just like, God, no, it's gonna be a long day. But then you just take that turn off of it back to a crosswind, and it's, I guess that mile I ran a 5:18. That was my slowest mile of the entire workout. 15 by a mile. The rest of them ended up averaging 5:09 off of and on a 60-second jog. But it's just like being in that moment. It's like, dude, you're fine. It's one rep. Like that was the worst aspect of it, and like obviously I still had to deal with that stretch every time. Um, but it was just kind of a little punch to the face early, and it was like that was only one rep on the next one. So even this morning, it was just kind of ride the wave, and kind of punch back if you can, or like my first K rep this morning, coming off of the miles I did prior, was just like it was just a gear shift. Basically, like I did a mile hard, mile threshold, the flush, then shifting back to something harder. It just like really felt awkward, and because it was just also cold too and windy. It's like, dude, that was just the first one. Like, no biggie. It wasn't fast as you wanted, but it's like now you go get it. So it's just kind of just playing that little mind game, just kind of one rep at a time.
Yeah. What was your entire session this morning?
So it was mile hard, mile threshold, and then 8 by K, and then 4 by 4. So
4 by 400.
4 by 400, yeah. So I was like, yeah, 441, 501, just a flush. Then I was like, I want to try to be two, because like, and here's the thing too, like right before my marathon I did last fall, in 216, I did just 8 by K, average 253, and it was like a perfect weather day. Like even like, yeah, it was like early September, but I still like, took off or late September, still like was running shirtless the last couple of reps. Here I'm bundled up. I got a like long sleeve or like a base layer, short sleeve, a vest, tights, cold as all hell. And my first one was, yeah, like 258. I'm like, No, and actually, I wanted because I was comparing to that session, it's like, dude, just trying to kind of stay out of it. I ended up averaging right around 257 for it, but it was just like just working hard, like a lot harder than I wanted to for sure. But it's like it was probably 55, sunny and perfect weather. You're going to get in Boulder when you're at altitude and it's sunny. It's like it feels way warmer. Here it's no sun out, just cloudy, miserable. So, um, but yeah, even the forest too, I just couldn't quite get moving. Like typically I can close in 61, 62. I was running 65, but it felt a little harder than I would have liked. But it's just again, take that with a grain of salt. I'm coming off of, like I said, I was really 2 weeks ago, 158, 145. This week will still be, like I said, about 135, 30. We'll see how it works out. But it's like, dude, I'm tired. Like I was bringing it down a little more prior to that marathon. So it's all just kind of having that perspective and just being able to see it for what it is, because ultimately it was still a pretty solid session.
Yeah. And how often are you doing some of the faster work? Like I know it's really interesting to hear you're closing in sort of 60, 61. Because when you think of marathoners, maybe less marathoners these days, but particularly ultra marathons, I think there's obviously and rightfully so, there's a real focus on volume. There's a real focus in time on feet. But a lot of especially community level runners who are working at trail or who are working at whether it's 100K here in Australia is probably a really popular event. One of the things that you don't often hear these athletes speak about is any of the speed work. Why is it that that's a part of your routine? Like, is there a particular aim that you're trying to get out of the faster stuff at the end of a session like that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just like, no matter what, like what we're doing, yeah, we're trying to run fast times for long distances, but ultimately it's still racing. My mentality with racing is you got to be able to finish, because speed kills, like speed wins races, really, no matter what the distance is. So, ultimately for me, if I can run pretty quick, like even fast Ks, fast eights, fast fours, I know it's going to help my marathon. And if I can run a really solid marathon, I know I can do really well at the ultras. So that's just kind of my mentality. And I kind of briefly touched on it earlier, then I think I took a tangent. But, for me, I'm going to do a fair amount of aerobic work, but I'm going to try to not overkill the aerobic work. And I'm going to try to, make my hopefully top end, you know, as far as this way as I can. That way, marathon pace or ultra pace gets a little closer to that top end and feels easier. So ultimately, it's all aerobic when you're doing, marathons and ultras. But still, I want my top end to be pretty solid to, again, hopefully kind of pull, what marathon pace is or ultra pace is, make it feel easier for, neuromuscular, super, super efficient at faster paces. So,
Yeah.
I know it's kind of weird math, kind of dumb runner math you could put it, but yeah, if I can run, like I said, if I can run a good 5K, I can run a good, 10K or half. If I can run a good half, I can run a good marathon. If I can run a good marathon, I can run a good, you know, hopefully, 50-mile, 100K. So,
Yeah, it is amazing how, like, when you boil it down, I mean, you can go as deep or as shallow as you like, but essentially, like, the keep it simple, stupid's a slogan for a reason. I mean, it's so much easier sometimes just going out with less weight in your mind about all the justification for the session. And I'm very much like you. Like, the way that I look at a session back in the day was I always appreciated the feeling of if I was running a five, just being able to run a pretty fast 15, because at least for the first 5 or 6 laps of a five, if you're running 1500 at a pretty good pace, that should feel like a jog. And
yep,
psychologically, that is always really beneficial. I mean, it's so nice to get in and be like, okay, I'm not just hanging on by a thread, but I feel relatively comfortable and controlled. Yeah, it is interesting that it doesn't seem to be a limit to that mathematics. Like whether you're running a 1500 to an ultra, the same math applies. Man, is
y-
140, is that peak mileage for you? Like, do you get much higher than that when it comes to volume?
not really. I mean, I added it up. This was, a couple weeks ago. I ended up in a 7-day span. I hit 158. That was semi not necessarily intentional. Just kind of what it ended up being. Just because I had a big Sunday, big Wednesday, and a big Saturday, and you had those up, and I was still running. My easy days were 15 and 5 typically, so fairly easy to get to that. But that's kind of top end. Yeah, like prior to like last summer, I had 4 dedicated weeks all between 140 and 145. This just with like the 100K world record attempt in the fall or in September, coming down from that a little bit, building up for um, just Indy to 100K worlds now. Um, and I ran the Twin Cities 10 miler October 6th as well. So I brought my miles on a little bit. So it's been a little harder to go. Want to make sure I could recover from the 100K world record attempt. Wasn't able to jump as high as I wanted to before, coming down a little bit for the 10 miler. But right after 10 miler, hopped right back in to try to hit that mileage because I think the extra strength really does help ultimately in a 100K in an ultra race. But really, if to answer your question, I try to get fairly consistent, at least a month of solid at the distance, 140 to 250. Because I just think, being able to, kind of callus the legs to that distance, but also within those weeks, I'm also doing a session like I did today. Still getting on the track and doing fours or finishing fast in some capacity, whether it's, ton of threshold, ton of Ks, ton of mile repeats. But, just always, doing the quicker stuff, also relatively high volume. So I think it's kind of that balance of the two.
Yeah. And how much does training volume or structure change from time to time during the year? Like, I'm assuming your year would be tapered in some structured in some way around like an off season build ups, tapers. Is that true, or is there much variation in your week to week work over the course of 12 months?
Truthfully, not a ton. No. This year I thought it would be a little different just because I headed up had a torn labrum in had it going into the U.S. Marathon trials this year in Orlando. Didn't know it because I was already down in Orlando. Didn't have my doctors on. Didn't have my massage therapist or my chiro to kind of give me a full like in depth what they thought it was. And I didn't have an MRI machine or access to it. Like, could have definitely found it, but I didn't know it was that bad. I'm like, I'll just get through it. So with that being said, I was like, well, when I'm coming back from this, I think I'll just go to a classic like Tuesday, Friday, Sunday, and just try to get fit. But then the opportunity to really like to go after the 100K world record came up really in May. I'm like, well, I think I can get fit enough because I had progressed pretty well. Just kind of building back, had done a few good workouts that weren't really indicative of a ton of stuff, but it was like, well, I'm running solid sessions off of not a ton of base behind me now. Also, too, it's like the fatigue also hadn't come in yet of like total volume. But I'm like, I think I can get pretty fit. So my typical training, like leading up to a race, if I can, let's say I have like a 3-month block going into a big race, uninterrupted, no races, which is typically kind of rare. I usually like to do like what I'm doing now. 100K Worlds is December 7th. I'm running Indy full the 9th. I like kind of a race about 4 weeks out, typically. So it'll be, if I can, like, get at least 8 weeks or 7 weeks, if you will, of like doing the Tuesday, Friday, Sunday steady long run. Then usually that steady long run of 25-ish miles at 540 to 550 pace, pretty fatigued. Also double every day too. So that's at least a 30-mile day. Usually pretty fatigued, so I don't go that Wednesday, Saturday, that next day, then reset to Tuesday, Friday. That's typically how I break it up. And then, my girlfriend hates it, but I'm terrible at resting. So even coming off of like races and stuff, I jump back in pretty quickly. Like even after the 100K world record attempts in Lithuania, I had to take a day off because it was a travel day coming back. So I was literally traveling for 25 hours, so I wasn't able to get a run in that like next Sunday. But then that next Monday, I ran 6 miles easy, just to like just flush the legs. And I just noticed too, like if I'm running easy enough, I recover pretty well. Just kind of flush the junk out of my legs and keep going. I just noticed I respond pretty well to that and haven't really ever had any issues. Again, it's good and it's bad because for me, there's always something else on the calendar. So I typically honestly follow that trajectory or that schedule almost year round if I can. So like I said, this year is a little unique with the coming off the injury. Basically missed all of February, all of March. Was just cross training, biking, aqua jogging, swimming laps, a lot of strength work, which is great. So I'm in the gym too, at least 3 days a week, doing some type of strength work. I do core every day. I know I'm going on tangent here, Tyson. So if I go too far off, let me
any regular.
If I go too far off, let me know. But yeah, that's typically how my cycles go. So but yeah, let's say I didn't have a race on the calendar and was just trying to like progress fitness. It'd probably be the Tuesday, Friday, Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday reset. So but that's typically again what I do. This week just kind of worked out with racing Indy, where this week will be basically a Wednesday, Saturday session. Last week was Tuesday, Friday, Sunday. Then next week will just be Tuesday, decent session, and then race on. I'll actually give myself 3 days of, easy days going into to a marathon or race. But yeah, typically I don't deviate a ton from that structure.
Yeah. Have you always been really good at handling that kind of mileage? Because, I mean, from a practical sense, it makes sense that if you can handle that mileage in your industry on a consistent basis, there's going to be some incredible benefit there. One thing I'll steal from the Mark Allen podcast, who was 6-time Ironman world champion, he was
Boulder
explaining
guy,
that, say that again.
Boulder guy.
Okay, I didn't want to assume that you knew who it was. I didn't want to throw you
Yeah,
under the bus again, but he is a Boulder guy. Or he
yeah.
was? Is he still there? I'm not sure.
As far as I know, he's still here. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, he was so interesting because one of the things he was explaining, which makes sense, is like a lot of people make the mistake of ramping up volume too quickly, getting injured, and then having to spend time on the sidelines. He goes, and if you're not running, you're not getting faster. Like, I know obviously there's slight exceptions to that rule if you're taking a down day from time to time, as long as it's the exception, not the rule. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And uh, in your shoes, that it's perfect. Like the advantage that you would have over competition who just don't have the genetics or the strength or the consistency that you've been able to develop would be huge over that distance. But is that something that you were good at as a junior, or have you always recognized that as one of your strengths, the ability to back up high mileage consistently?
Uh, Throughout college, I definitely developed it. Like, let's say in high school, growing up before, running collegiately, um, I got up to like 60, 70 miles a week in the summer. Then during, the racing season, running maybe 30, 40 miles a week. 'Cause you're racing at least twice a week. And in high school, it's not a massive deal. It's just like run fast on track once a week, go do a quote unquote tempo run and race, do strides. But in college, like Plaz, Coach Placentia did an awesome job of like just progressing me. Like going into my freshman year, like let's do 70 miles like this summer. Like get up to 70 consistently for I think it was like 6 weeks. So got that a little bigger base. Following summer, like responded really well, had a pretty good fall. I ended up getting injured, unfortunately. That was just kind of my fault of not sleeping too much and going out too much as a freshman. Truthfully, I was a little undisciplined there. But you learn quickly. So um, after my freshman year, it was basically 80, 85, then was 90, 90, 95, and then 100, 105. So super, super, super gradual. All just basically aerobic work and strides in the summer. But after that first, like really kind of second summer when I was just putting in consistent like 85-ish, 80 like miles a week, um, I just was able to like run long runs super, super well, even during the season. Um, and Plaz would always say, he's like, you're gonna, that'll translate well to the roads one day. Whatever that meant was up to total interpretation. I didn't think I would be doing this as a career at this point. Um, just because I, wasn't. I was a couple times state champion. I was all Big Ten. I was all region. I was never an All American. Never made NCAA track nats. Was super super competitive in cross country just because I could just grind. So that kind of translates well to either the marathon and ultras. So, um, but yeah, I think with me too, and I don't want to say I was ever the most talented guy. I definitely wasn't, but I was just able to like whatever I could like scratch and claw with, or scratch and claw to get extra fitness, I would do it. So whether it's the higher mileage or doing extra reps or being doing extra strength work, I've just always kind of like really leaned into that. So I think like with obviously getting then post collegiately, I got to 120. Join Hanson's like, what number do you think you want to get to? I'm like, I'll do 140 if you think that's feasible. Like, well, yeah, I think that'll be, Kevin Hanson was like, that'd be great for you. I think if you want to do it, we'll get you up to that. Just because again, I've just always enjoyed like really kind of leaning into that aspect of training. So and obviously if you can stay healthy, you're going to respond pretty well to it. It's just, I don't want to say it's super time consuming because you're just out there running. But it's like, if you have the time and want to do it, I think it's definitely beneficial. So obviously I've had my fair share of injuries. I won't say fair share, but like the last couple years have been really, really up. And then, a couple, like I had a double sacral stress fracture in 2022. And then torn labrum, earlier this year. But I think definitely if you can do it, it's definitely worth it. But it's just something that we kind of embodied, leaned into as of, probably since joining Hanson's, because they were even too, they love those guys that gave me my opportunity, but they're like, oh, you're not nearly as talented as Dathan, Ritz and Heine. It's like, well, duh, it's Dathan. So it's like, so you really benefit from higher mileage. I'm like, I agree. So, and again, I just always responded pretty well to it and the progression that Plaz put me on through college and, my marathon debut. So,
Yeah, awesome, man, awesome. Did I read correctly that I think, did you say it was double sacral stress fracture
I didn't,
2022. Was that before your 50-mile world record?
that was before. Yeah. So that was basically, I raced the Houston half marathon that January of 2022. And then literally like started feeling something kind of in my lower back. I was getting ready for US 50K championships that were supposed to be like the back end of February. And, I just felt something back there. I'm like, ah, it's nothing. I've run through kind of a lot of crap throughout my career. And usually it's just like, it either goes away or it fixes itself over time with the right, body work or chiropractic work. So I didn't think much of it, but it just gradually kept getting worse and worse. Um, I'm like, just, take some rub some Voltaren, take some Aleve, we'll be fine. And eventually got to the point where I couldn't even get out of bed. Like I'm walking around like in the morning, just like grabbing tables and stuff just to get around and wait, wait for the 4 leaves to kick in and start running. Um, but eventually like my, my chiro, Kyle Buck was just like, yeah, you should go get an MRI. Like, well, like you can't walk, like you can't jump on it. Yeah, just grade forward it, cracked it straight through because I just kept running on it. Like an idiot. So, and then ultimately just tried coming back too quickly, kind of that summer, and yeah, refractured actually the opposite side because I was compensating. So not fun. But so I missed basically all of 2023, or excuse me, 2022, and then first race back was the Austin half marathon, February of 2023. So 13-month kind of hiatus there. So
Man,
a lot
it's
of biking and
really,
cross training,
say that again.
a lot of biking and cross training.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine that's true. It is. It's so interesting because I totally relate, and I know so many listeners to this podcast would be in that exact same shoe. But for anyone who is relatively new, like I'd love to hear you talk to the idea of navigating your way through pain because it is true. It's very rare that I'll go out on a run where everything feels good. Like there'll be a run where okay, I wake up, there's a bit of knee pain, there's a bit of calf pain, there's a bit of foot pain, I've got a sore shoulder. And you do, like you learn to develop a little bit of a gauge as to what's serious and what's not. But in that process, maybe for better or worse, you also develop the ability to push yourself through a lot of discomfort that I think a new runner would probably stop at and go, that doesn't seem normal. The flip side of that is exactly what you said. I mean, I've been in the exact situation so many times where I'm like, nah, I'm pretty sure this is just another niggle. And then it'll hang around for 2 weeks and I'm hobbling, I'm limping, and I'm like, oh man, all right, I'm really going to have to address this. And it's sometimes, I mean, I understand it because sometimes until you get slapped in the face, you might just take 2 weeks off for something which is just going to solve itself, without any focused attention. Sometimes you need that big whack to go, all right, well, this is actually serious. But I guess that's point A of what I want to say. But point B is it's also interesting because as a self-diagnosed type A personality at many times throughout the year, I'll often justify how much I deserve a really good performance based on the consistency of the weeks that I've laid up. And you're not the first guy that I've heard talk about coming off a relatively not long-term injury, but a pretty serious injury and absolutely smacking it out of the park with a 50-mile world record. So, I mean, I've just thrown a lot at you there. I think there's two questions. Firstly, like, do you have any gauge for navigating your way through pain during races that it actually works? And secondly, is that interesting to you that, or inspiring, encouraging maybe, that you can take that time off training and come out and still run the best you've ever run? Or do you feel as though that still had like a negative impact on your overall performance on a 50-mile, despite being the world record?
Yeah. I guess to first address your gauge, it's hard. It's really, really, really hard. I joke with Kyle, my chiropractor. I'm like, if I have to go and see you, I know I'm pretty effed up. Like I know I'm pretty desperate. Like I get body work once a week. I see my guy Marcus. He does basically kind of all the maintenance that I need to see. Obviously, manual therapy, massage. Can also do, I have kind of chronic back tightness in my SI, so he'll work on that. Um, and there's always something like my foot hurts, like where my hamstring attaches, like, up near my glute. That's always like kind of sort of pulling on the left side, like there's kind of always something that's there. Heck, even today, like, I mean, I lifted yesterday, so like my glutes felt sore. It was just, general soreness state. You want to kind of be able to tell what's actual soreness, what's just kind of a niggle versus like if it gets progressively worse throughout a run, that's never a good sign. I mean, I have it where like my post tib is pretty jacked up right now too on my right side. Like I just listed 3 things that are kind of messed up on me, but it's like I know throughout the run, if it gets worse throughout the run, that's a bad sign. And if it gets better or warms up a little bit, it's like you're probably okay. Obviously, if it comes back right when you finish, not a good sign. I'd probably go get that checked out. That's probably my best barometer. Is if it goes away throughout the run, warms up into it, um, you're probably okay. Whereas like my sacrum, like it'd be okay to start, and it would just get progressively worse. It literally felt like I'm trying to think of like the analogy. So like Lincoln Logs.
I
You
don't
know what
know
I'm
a
talking
Lincoln log.
about? Okay. So just think of basic. All right. It's basically like think of like a
Let me
God.
Google Lincoln log and I'll try and paint a picture. Lincoln log, is it?
So it's like a childhood like toy set that kids would play
Oh,
with. So
sure. Yeah,
okay,
okay. I got the image here.
so picture like there's like I forgot, like it was like one of the ends basically of where you could had like insert a Lincoln log into like a hole, so it would like kind of like latch on. It basically
Yes.
felt like the end of a log hitting the end. Like that's what it felt like. Felt like my bone was doing that. Yeah, not good in my lower back. So it's like, and it just got worse and worse throughout the run. That's a bad sign if you feel that. Go get an MRI. But if it gets better, to answer your question, that's probably my number one barometer. Because like even I'm gonna go shake out after this, and I'm gonna do 20 minutes of foam rolling, band work, um, calf work, um, some light toe work, just to like make sure everything's activated, firing, loosened up, and I'll still take 10-ish minutes to like start feeling really fluid. And that's also just due with like the work I'm doing. Like I kind of need to do that. Just in terms of the volume and the intensity I'm doing, it just kind of makes things flow a lot better and hopefully feel better and just prevent injuries, truthfully. Um,
Yeah.
and then yeah, going back to the 50 mile, it's hard. I struggle with this answer, honestly. It's hard to answer because let's say I didn't get injured. Um, I was training really well, and that's the thing too. In 2023, I joined Roots at that point. Was kind of still with Corey through kind of 2021, 2022. Got injured, and it was just like I don't have anyone to train with. I'm injured. Kind of want like I'm really good friends with those guys. That's Noah Girardi, Frank Lara, Sydney Gedabudai, Austin Dahlquist, Parker Sydney was on the team at the time. Um, Ultimately, like my best friends, I hung out with them. Aiden Reed, another guy, still like my best friends. Like I ran with Girardi a couple days ago, so ran with Austin yesterday. Um, so those are like the guys that I hung out with anyway. So it just made a ton of sense to go over that way. Um, that was a tangent there. I'll bring it back. But
Bro, no apologies for tangents
yeah,
on this show. I think
yeah,
I reckon there'd be thousands of listeners out there who know that I've got a reputation for taking a big tangent, and so I think if there
good.
weren't tangents, people would be very confused. And it's always where the most interesting stuff seems to be found. So feel free to take us
Yeah.
wherever you like.
Well, yeah. So here's how I was going with that, and ultimately it's why I left Roots. It was because I kind of wanted to dabble in ultras, but the opportunity just wasn't there because they were a marathon group. Even wanted to do like the 50K champs at one point. It just it's not a marathon, so and the training truthfully just didn't really suit running conducively to running a really good ultra. Um, but I'll say this: when I was injured, well, let me back up actually. So in 2021, I paced Des for her 50K world record, the women's 50K world record. And I did as a long run, hopped in, no taper. I doubled the day before. Um, paced her at 5:47 pace for 50K. So 31-ish miles. And in my head, I was like, well, I just did that as a workout, no taper, paced Des 5:47 pace. I'm like, what's the 50-mile world record pace? I'm like, it's 5:48 pace. I'm like, I think I could do 19 more miles at that pace. So it had been low key in my head, like kind of a flip switch. I think I could go get it, but again, being with Roots through 2023 just wasn't really, or through 2022, 2023 wasn't an option, and I was injured. So ended up going and buying a pretty nice road bike, dropped $8,000 on it, which for in Boulder, I would say I was just like, there's a lot of good places to bike, and I'm like, I wanted to really like. I'm like, I'm injured. I can't do anything for at least 3-4 months, like to run. I'm like, I need to go like dedicate myself to like, because I can aqua jog for a long time. I can't swim laps for a long time. Like I need to just go do something I'll enjoy. And I bought that. I'm like, all right, that's a major financial commitment. You got to use it now. Like you're sitting in that saddle for 3-4 hours a day, no matter what. So, went and did that. So in my head though, like what I'm like this in the back of my mind, I'm like, it'd be cool to break the 50-mile world record. And while I'm doing all this cross training, like I'm like, all right, so the world record at the time was 4 hours 50 minutes. So in my head, I'd be like, okay, like if I'm dreading about going and biking for 5 6 hours in the mountains, or like worried about going in aqua jogging for 2 3 hours at the pool, like how do you expect to go run 5:47 pace or faster for 50 miles for 4 hours? Like that bike ride, that's way easier than running for a 5 hour bike ride is way easier than a 5 hour run, in my opinion, or like 5 hours or 3 hours in the pool is way more mind numbing than a 3 hour run, So it was just honestly just me kind of callousing my mind to that and being like, 3 hours, that's nothing. 3 hours in the pool, piece of cake.
Yeah.
Or 6 hour bike ride up on peak to peak from Boulder. It's like easy. It's a bike ride. So if I'd been fully healthy, I don't know if I would have been able to like. Obviously, you're callousing your mind in a different way. You're callousing your legs. I think I may have lost a little bit of. It took a long time to get my running legs back for sure. But just in terms of like really preparing my mind for it, it'd have been something I would think about almost every day. Getting in the pool at 6:30 a.m. to aqua jog for 2 3 hours. Like it's like you know you got to be able to do this again if you're gonna sometime down the line go break a world record at run 5:45 to 5:48 pace for 50 miles. So and that was the one thing too, just even getting in the pool or on the bike, it's like you're just visualizing the race and breaking the record. So you were able to just practice that over and over, like repeatedly, almost daily for like a year essentially. So definitely put it into practice on race day, because it's kind of just put myself there so many times. And if I was fully healthy running throughout 2022 2023, the front half, it's like, yeah, I probably could have like worked on like, probably it was because Roots' training is really conducive to running well at like half marathon distance. Probably could have gone and got a good half PR for sure. Maybe chased a good marathon PR. But I don't think my mind wouldn't have been nearly as prepared for like the ultra distances. So I think ultimately it helped. Would I be a better runner? I'm not sure. But ultimately, I got the job done either way. But I just think really like just getting in that pool, visualizing it for hours and hours, aqua jogging. My longest day was 4 hours in the pool, which is not just aqua jogging, miserable. There were a couple times where I'd do, let's say like I get bored aqua jogging for an hour. I'd be like, my minimum was like an hour. Like get to an hour and then you can like adjust, and like if it sucks, go hop on the bike trainer or go bike outside, whatever you like. If it's winter, go on the bike trainer. But I just like get to an hour of that, like all right, let's swim laps for an hour. Then we'll aqua jog for another 30. It's like, all right, another 30 minutes. That's 3 hours, and you can be happy with that. So then you'll cross train again later in the day. So just kind of those mind games really kind of calloused it. So
That's cool. I like that. I like that phrase, callousing the mind. Like, it's very true. I know that feeling. I know it from running. I know it from cycling. I definitely understand it in the pool. I can do 4 laps in a pool and be like, oh my gosh, like get me out of here. This is this is brutal. At least people
yeah,
say running's boring, but if you've got a nice trail in a nice location, you're pretty set. It's a nice opportunity to switch off and sort of still enjoy the scenery, whereas the scenery in a pool doesn't change. So yeah, callousing the mind is seems like a perfect training ground for that.
no, and the thing with the pool too, I mean, like like I'm sure you've been in like lap pools and stuff where it's like they always have the big red, like the clock with the time, and it just like so like there'd be like I'd have days too. It's like, all right, don't look at that for as long as you can. There's some days where you check it and you're like, all right, it's been at least 40 minutes. You check, it's been like a 16. You're like, oh my god, it's gonna be a long day. But then but then there's times you're like, oh shit, I'm already over an hour. Like great, like stay on it. So definitely, again, good for the mind. Not necessarily the best. I mean, I was doing what I could with my injury. Like obviously I was still in the gym multiple times a week too, lifting. I'm just kind of re-strengthening, restructuring like everything around my hips, making sure everything was solid. Ton of core work. But obviously you got to keep the engine strong too, and that's kind of what I did in the pool, because it's really hard to get your heart rate up. And for me too, it's just way harder to get my heart rate up on the bike, in the pool, all that. So it was a lot of just aerobic work, pure aerobic work. So
Yeah. How are you structuring your gym sessions? Is it majority like that? Like, it sounds like there's a fair balance between actually lifting weights and body weight work as well. But like with the mileage that you're doing, it sounds like it'd be difficult to get any time to really lift anywhere near max. Like, it sounds like you'd be in some kind of Is that true? Like, are you sort of hitting near max reps or?
I still get after in the gym. That's probably also why like today I was definitely working a little harder than I wanted to, because like even yesterday I was yeah, you start with like basic posterior chain work, some single leg balance work, some calf work just to get warmed up. Um, then yeah, I usually get into, like yesterday was deadlifts to box jumps, glute bar lifts, um, some more hamstring eccentric work, bilateral deadlifts. Still working that. I think what else? Med ball slams. Yeah, single leg hops. I think what else? Yeah, several different like Bulgarian split squats, kind of all that. I'm not necessarily like doing a ton of weight. I mean, I was deadlifting 200 yesterday, just over 200, which is a fair amount to box jumps. So,
Wow. What is
the one thing
that?
I
Do you
didn't
know
do
what is
was
that? What? Sorry, I'm just trying to figure that out in kilos because we got a solid. What did you say? 200
like
pounds
200,
to.
200 pounds, yeah, ish. Or it's like two, don't quote, I think it's my bar of 73, and then I had,
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, so 90 kilos. Yeah, you're not mucking around.
yeah, well, at least for a distance runner, not terrible. So,
Sure.
but for me, especially with 100K, like the first thing to, or in an ultra or even marathon, the first thing that typically goes, or you start feeling your quads pretty badly. So it's just callousing them. And like I didn't do this today. I went in after my session. My buddy Chris owns a gym here in Boulder. Kinesis Integrated, and did 8 by 1 minute sled pulls just right after my session. I don't know the weight on the sled, pretty damn heavy, but just went basically 40, 50 yards backwards, reset it backwards again for by 8. Just working the absolute heck out of my quads as much as I can. So, and I just noticed too, like obviously I'm working on strength and that as well, but also too, it's just like being resilient, and just being able to like, I think that helps you stay injury free, like just the stronger you are. So
Yeah, man, that's so interesting, man. I would be absolutely abused by listeners if I didn't do some talk around diet because ultra running, especially, is where I find things seem to get really interesting because it's where that conversation between fats and carbs seems to be taken a little more seriously, particularly as you get up towards that 100K mark. I mean, for the majority of marathon runners, it seems the best in the world are all fueling with carbs. And then you speak to a bloke like Zach Bitter and you go, okay, well, there's definitely like a little bit of a balance between the two. What are you doing in regards to fueling for, I mean, start at the 50K and work up to 100 if you like, and feel free to tell me if there's much difference or what, because yeah, it seems as though, at least in my mind, it's become a lot more of a I don't know. People take the idea of fats a lot more seriously, I think, over the really long stuff.
yeah, I mean, short answer is I don't want to say I got lucky, but I didn't change up much really. Um, and this is Indy will kind of be a dress rehearsal for 100K Worlds a little bit. Obviously, Indy's typically can be a little colder. Indy is going to be probably 70 to 80 degrees and humid. Obviously, different temperatures, but I'll basically say kind of the similar plan that I've used honestly throughout the last few years because I just found what works for me. I can't tell you the exact ratio of fats to carbs I'm burning. I just kind of know like if I can take in the carbs, I'm going to take it. So I don't really, I have during the race I don't really take any fats per se. I mean I do supplement with L-carnitine. I take at least 4 grams a day of L-carnitine, so just to help with fat metabolism and energy. But my typical race plan, which for Indy, it's kind of unique where they don't have bottles every 5K. They have bottles at like basically 10K, 20K, 30K. So there, I'm going to do basically just liquid carbs and I'm going to stash gels on me. Throughout then my middle bottle at basically 20-ish K, it'll be 24 grams of carbs, which is Raw Nutrition, or actually my nutrition sponsor. Then I'll mix a Ketone IQ caffeine in that as well. And then probably the middle, so like 5K, 15K, 25K, 35K, I'll do a Morton gel 160. So roughly break down to roughly every 5K I'll be getting a gel. Then go back to liquid carbs, and I'll do also a gel and a ketone shot at the start, and also ketone shot when I wake up. So in terms of like fat metabolism or burning that, I will have ketones as fuel. So that way they're just readily available too, just for natural energy. And no, I don't necessarily have to tap into mine, or like I don't have to, be bonking to produce ketones. So that's kind of what I do feeling wise. For I'll go back up to Tunnel Hill. Hopefully people find this insightful, where I ran the McCurdy Micro last October, is like October 13th or so, exactly 4 weeks before Tunnel Hill. And that was every 5K, and I rotated 3 bottles. Every 5K was just liquid carbs, basically 20 grams of liquid carbs with like 300 milligrams of electrolytes, or I guess sodium. Then it was going to be electrolytes in the bottle with the Morton gel. So basically rip the gel, finish it, chase with electrolytes, just kind of helps with absorption, rehydration. Then the third bottle was liquid carbs with a ketone shot, 10 ketone IQ, another one of my partners. So I went that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 for my 9 bottles. What Tunnel Hill is kind of unique because basically average out to be every 5 miles you at an aid station. So I just plugged and played and went liquid carbs. No, what did I do? No, I did electrolytes with a Morton 160 gel, and then I went ketone shot with 20 grams of liquid carbs and 350 milligrams of electrolytes, and back and forth, and it just worked out. That's just where the aid stations worked out to be at Tunnel Hill. Obviously for Indy, like I said, I'll go back and forth between the liquid carbs and the gel. I'll just stash the gels on me. So they will have tables, but only 3 of them. Let's go. Liquid carbs with the middle one being carbs and a ketone shot. They'll also have 100 milligrams of caffeine. And then at 100K Worlds, it's unique. It's like first it was a 4K loop. Now it's a 5K loop. We're not sure if it's going to change again. It'll probably be hot and humid. So every 5K, I'll probably go back and forth again every 5K. Kind of do the same thing, just with liquid carbs with electrolytes. Raw Fuel has 24 grams of carbs, 300 milligrams of sodium. So sodium citrate and sea salt, so you're getting a little variance there, hopefully more absorption. So, and then I'll go back to a Morton gel 160. Rob's working on some prototype gels that I'd love to have before then, but I haven't really had enough time to practice with them, so I'm probably just going to stick with Morton because I know it works. Then do Morton gel with Raw Replenish, which is actually 1,000 milligrams of sodium. So I'll actually really put emphasis on trying to finish that as much as possible, just stay hydrated. So basically every 5K, assuming it's still the 5K loop, go back and forth right there. So, and then probably every 15-ish miles, I'll do a ketone shot mixed in with something. So, every like 5th lap or so, go and grab, probably just liquid carbs again with Raw Fuel with mixed with a ketone IQ shot. So, little variance there. Again, it's all just kind of one experiment, just kind of figuring out what sits well. I mean, everyone's different. You look at David Roach, who also another Boulder guy, just won Javelina, Leadville champ. That man throws down, I forgot his exact routine, but that man's throwing down like 3 gels an hour that are each like 40 to 50 grams a piece. He's rocking like 130 grams of carbs an hour, whereas me, I'm right around probably 90 to 100. Obviously, I think I could get more, but I just kind of know how that sits in my stomach. And I noticed too, going back and forth between liquid carbs and a gel kind of gives you that little bit of variance. My stomach responds really well to it. So,
yeah, awesome, man. And are you using a lot of those supplements or gels and ketones and things during training?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, this morning pre-session, it was, right when I woke up, it was, 1,000 milligrams of electrolytes from Raw Replenish, ripped a ketone IQ, shot just a normal, the original, 10 grams of ketones. Obviously went with my breakfast, which is bread, nut butter, creamed honey, make my pour over coffee. I was then sipping, actually, I don't sip, but I rip it real quick. Another thing of Raw Fuel, so 24 grams of carbs then, and then go warm up. And then pre-workout, it's Morton 40 gel, and then caffeine ketone shot. So it's 5 grams of ketones, 100 milligrams of caffeine. Then just after the miles, I sipped, took a fat rip of Raw Fuel, then went on with my Ks and didn't have anything there. Really, I should fuel. But then right after, before the cool down, basically took another fat rip of some Raw Fuel. And then right when I got back, had a Morton bar that I finished, and had another ketone IQ just help with recovery right after. So.
Yeah, man. No, awesome. What are you? So 10 days out from Indianapolis, did you say?
10 days. Yes, sir.
10 days. And what are you, 216 you're sitting at right now?
216.10 is my PR, yeah. And I did that so it's kind of funny. I tied it. So my debut marathon in 2018, which got me my deal with Hanson's Brooks, was, chip time was, 210. Gun time was 212. So whatever, I've always said like 2:16:10 is my PR. Then at McCurdy, I literally ran 2:16:10 gun time. So um, I guess I technically PR'd by 2 seconds last year after a 5-year hiatus. But yeah, my PRs. That was a long answer to your question, but yeah, two sixteen
Nah,
ten.
man. Nah, awesome, awesome. Are we you looking to shake that up, or are we too busy in the volume period?
This is my sandbag. Probably too busy in the volume period. But however, they asked me. This is like last week. They sent out the, pre-race like
Yeah.
kind of elite declaration. Like, are you for sure going to be here? And I said yes. And like, what is your expected finish time? I said 2:15 flat. So I kind of just put it on myself. Like, I enjoy calling my shot. It's in terms of, I guess now it's worked out relatively well. I mean, I called my shot at Tunnel Hill. I called it this past fall in Lithuania. I didn't get it in Lithuania, but I'm 50% on calling my shot at world records. So obviously not by no means a world record attempt in the marathon, but I think I'm definitely in that shape. I've done the work I've just had the workouts that show I can go do that. Will I be fresh enough? That's the question. If I had to tell you right now, the answer is absolutely not. I'm in a hole right now, and again, it's just like there are some days where it's just absolutely hitting, where it's just like that the 15 by a mile, like it wasn't anything crazy, but like the floats were like pretty honest. Like I was running 6-minute pace to 6:30 pace on the minute jog, and then running 5:0s. Like averaged 5:09 for them. So it's like that's at altitude during
Yeah.
50-ish, 158-mile week. Like the fitness is 100% there. It's just like is the fatigue is also there as well. So it's kind of figuring that out. And again, like I don't want to bring my mileage down that much because again, like the goal is worlds. Like does Indy mean anything? No, not really. Like I'd rather be a world champion in 5.5 weeks
Yeah, man.
than Indy monumental champion. But with that being said, I think we'll see. I'm definitely going back and forth and go back to like the coaches, and I'm definitely gonna be pinging Des after like she's racing New York this weekend, so I don't want to bother her a ton, even though we were talking like an hour ago. Um, but I'll definitely be like, yo, what should I do mileage wise? She'll be like, dude, she'll probably be like, chill out, coach how to run fast, like coming with the mental approach or the mental edge of being like, I just PR'd in the marathon going into an ultra. That'll probably bode better than being like, I had an okay day because I was tired. Um, so yeah, it's
No
definitely good to
sense, man.
have people in your corner. Circling back to that, so
For
um,
sure, brother. For sure,
but
man. You have
but
to
again,
put in a good work. Sorry, go on.
but yeah, it's just that the internal battle that I have with myself. That when I am self coached, I'm just like, well, what do I do? What's gonna be more beneficial for 100K? So again, it's always good to have sounding boards.
It's true. I don't think I've ever heard someone 10 days out from a marathon talk about how good they feel either. So I know you're in good company.
Yeah, exactly. I've never felt great, at this point out from a marathon. So, and you're not supposed to.
Man, yeah, it's true. I was just about to say, you got to put in a good word for me. Actually, I emailed Des this week. I don't know how online she is, but I didn't realize you guys were affiliated. I'm trying to get her on the show. So if you've got any sway, yeah, put in a good word for her and get her on because I'd love to chat to her. She seems like, man, she seems and I mean this as a compliment, a unique character in the best sense of the description.
Oh, she's genuinely Des, and this is not a shot at my. I have one little sister. She's 2 years younger. It's not a shot at Abby, her, but I'm closer to Des than I am my actual sister. I mean, she's literally like she's like family to me. I go visit her and Ryan every summer, stay at their place. Yeah, I mean they're two of my like her and Ryan, her husband, are two of my favorite people. So
Dude, I can't wait to see how she goes at New York.
yeah, I think she's excited. I mean, it's definitely a unique. I mean, it's Des on New York. It's like she's always gonna be dangerous. Like no matter this is not a shot at her. She knows that she is getting a little older, so that's
Yeah,
definitely not an advantage to her. But she has more experience than anyone. She's just a gamer, so
yeah,
it'll be
man.
cool to follow along.
That's awesome. I'm just going to cut that clip and say Des is definitely getting a little older and send it to her.
Yeah, I mean she knows it. She knows it. So
Only joking, bro. That was a lot of fun. Thanks so much for being so generous with your time and your information, man. I really appreciate your really out there or outright approach with what it is that you're doing. I like the honesty and it's really helpful from a training sense as well. I know so many of the listeners here really appreciate that. So, man, so good to talk to you. We'll have to touch base again. Maybe after or later in the year, early next year, some stage after you've had a crack at this 100K. I'm excited to see how it goes. Sorry,
yeah,
the
I think
100K is coming up, yeah?
100K World Championships. Yeah, so in
Sure,
Bangalore,
that's right.
India. So
Yeah. Oh, nice. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome.
yeah, it'd be.
All right,
I
brother.
mean, that's the big one. That's been the big circle. The entire year was the goal, just getting on that team, and then hopefully winning a world title. So easier
Come
said than
on,
done
man.
for sure.
Come on, man. No, I'm cheering for you. All right, brother. Thanks again.
I appreciate it, man.